U.S. elections, which is something I'm gravely concerned about. But that's the role.
And finally, we cannot have the DNI trying to put his or her hands on the scales in terms of tipping the outcome of any American election. Will you commit to not put those hands on the scales?
The role of the intelligence community is to provide information, not to engage in policy or those things. So yes.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. I agree that the role is very different, but I think that's true of most government roles. And we never quite know how people will perform in them, and some of us have been very satisfied with nominees we've confirmed in both parties, and some have been dissatisfied. But look at our former chairman, Marco Rubio. Being a senator, I think we can all agree, is very different from being the Secretary of State or being the National Security Advisor, and he's pitching a near perfect game in those roles, if you ask me. But you can't reason by analogy. You've been a Wall Street lawyer for a long time. How long have you been a lawyer?
Goodness, 36 years,
And
33 years.
And so you're governed by attorney-client privilege. That's not classified material, but it is require you as an ethical obligation. Have you ever had any issue in handling attorney-client material?
No.
And the material you're handling in Wall Street, I mean, you're talking about market-moving material, millions or billions of dollars.
Billions and probably in aggregate trillions of dollars of information that you have to be very careful not to allow to slip.
Or very sensitive personal information about clients as well. And no issues ever in the past dealing with those.
None.
Thank you. Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Clayton. Mr. Clayton, I want to give you a little bit of history of the ODNI. I was a co-author of the legislation that created the Director of National Intelligence, along with Senator Joe Lieberman, Congresswoman Jane Harman, and Congressman Pete Hoekstra in the House. And it came about following hearings that we had and extensive analysis of a failure of the more than 18 intelligence agencies to share vital information, information that perhaps could have allowed the dots to be connected and the horrific terrorist attack of 9/11 to have been discovered and deterred. I'll never forget a conversation that I had with Secretary of State Colin Powell. He said our intelligence community needed an empowered quarterback to make sure that there was sharing of information and a collective, collaborative approach to intelligence. Instead, what we had was a very siloed approach. And that's why we worked so hard to draft the Terrorist Prevention and Intelligence Reform Act that created the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the NCTC, the National Counterterrorism Council, which would bring agencies together. So I understand that ODNI has grown far bigger than we ever would have envisioned when we wrote that law. But I am deeply disturbed that some administration officials, and indeed some senators, have called for not just a reduction in the size of ODNI, but that we abolish it altogether. There remains a critical purpose and mission for ODNI to lead and manage the 18 separate intelligence agencies with worldwide operations that include space, cyber, and human intelligence domains. Do you commit to maintaining the vital role of ODNI and its NCTC?
The short answer, and I'd like to elaborate, is yes, I do. And having seen this from the outside now, in my roles and also preparing to hopefully take on this role, if we didn't have this role, we'd have to invent it, because there needs to be a focal point for coordination across the other 17 intelligence agencies. There needs to be a place of oversight, a place to resolve conflict. I look at it as a board of directors roles. And to the extent that the ODNI has gotten into operations or started to play the roles of some of those other agencies, it probably should pull back, because it's difficult to be both operations and oversight, but I think an oversight role is important.
Thank you. The second issue I want to bring up with you is the anomalous health incidents, also known as Havana Syndrome, that have occurred since 2016 and caused, in some cases, career-ending disabilities for our intelligence, our defense, our State Department employees. The intelligence community initially took these attacks and care for victims seriously. However, for various reasons, this quickly seemed to turn into a very dismissive attitude throughout the federal government with little forward progress. This led Senator Gillibrand and I to co-author the Havana Act of 2021 to support the victims who are not receiving care nor compensation. I have been frustrated over the past few years across both the Biden administration and the Trump administration by the excuses provided and misinterpretations of AHI attacks and the slow implementation of Senator Gillibrand's and my bill. Last week, Tulsi Gabbard rescinded 2 previous AHI intelligence community assessments and started to reassess both previous and new intelligence related to AHIs. It's critical that we know about possible foreign weapon capabilities and how to keep our hardworking personnel who are stationed in dangerous parts of the world safe from these dangerous attacks. But forward movement remains very slow. The DNI confirmed